So we have refined our sketch. We have found a lot of references. That does not mean that these are going to be the only references we need, or we might even change gears and swap out one of these once we start building it. There is never going to be a perfect reference. And the beauty of digital compositing rather than traditional collaging is we can really alter these references in significant ways. So once I've picked the composition I want, now what I do is I'm going to crop it. I've already posted it to Canvas. It's here, the whole thing. Now I'm going to use this new tool, which is underneath the magic wand, and I'm going to crop around it. Basically make a box around it, and that's going to cut off everything else. Notice I'm not trying to crop inside it, I'm cropping outside of it. So I have a little bit of creative leeway. Hit return. It is now cropped. Now I'm going to, just because I did this in multiple layers of painting, I'm going to flatten it. So that's not a step you'll need to do, just working off your own photo or your sketch. Okay, now this is the right, what's called aspect ratio for my sketch. It has the length and the width that I basically want for my composite. So just like we did with our emoji screen grab, I now need to make this image print quality in terms of its physical dimensions and in terms of its pixel resolution. So first I go to image size, and I see, okay, this is 18 inches by 14 inches by 72 pixels per inch. What is our minimum for this class, for any assignment?
8 by 10 inches.
8 by 10 inches, right? So this is already beyond that. And that's great. Never go below 8 by 10 inches. And then the resolution, what's our minimum?
350.
Our studio standard is 350. The minimum would be 300. And that's in the assignment direction. So never go below 8 by 10 inches at 300 pixels per inch. That's because that's standard minimum print resolution. I like to go a little bit above that, so I go to 350. That's our studio resolution. And look, that's going to grow my sketch, just like it did your screen grab of your emojis, from 3 megabytes to 92 megabytes. So that's the computer creating a lot of information. And that's okay, because it's just a sketch, right? So we get all that distortion. That's just because this is our blueprint. But we need to scale it up like that before we start bringing in our reference. Otherwise, our reference will get shrunken down to a resolution that's not good enough. Okay, now, that's my background. This is a step I like to do. I'm now going to use my move tool and my rulers. And remember, you can turn your rulers on and off with Command R. And with the rulers on, I'm going to click on the ruler and then drag down what's called a guide. And I'm going to roughly give myself guides around this rectangular composition, just to kind of frame it a little bit. You'll see why in a second. So that's roughly what I want. Now I can start bringing in references. Let's bring in number 1 first. Just drag and drop it in. And it comes in as a smart object, right? So I can tilt it. And I can place it. Hit return. The problem is, if I start doing this with a lot of references, like here's my foreground, I can grow it a little bit. I don't need it that big. Maybe about there. Plop it in. The problem is they start covering each other up really quickly, right? So I want to give myself working space. So this is my finished artwork. I've taped the paper and the plan onto my desk at home, but I need space around it to collage. So now I go to canvas size, image, canvas size, not image size, canvas size. It's where you grow your paper. And with white as the background, what I can do is now grow it to be 40 inches wide by 30 inches tall. If I'm doing portrait format, I would do the reverse, 30 inches wide, 40 inches tall. Why 30 by 40? We're going to use that consistently through the class, it's because that's the largest sheet of paper a professional printing press can accommodate. So it's good to know that dimension. 30 by 40 inches. There's really no reason to make anything in Photoshop for most commercial purposes that is larger than 30 by 40 inches at print resolution. Okay, now this gives us my desk. This is just like my drafting table at home. And now I can bring in those references, but I don't need to place them yet. I can just kind of bring them off to the sides so I can cut out from them. What are the other ones I'm using? I was going to use this swamp, right? It was going to kind of go between this one and this one. Can make it a little bit bigger. As long as they're smart objects, I can keep playing with it. Hit return. They're all stacked up here. They're even numbered for me just because I named them that way. I have this other temple, which will go on this side. Put it off to the side. I don't need it quite so big. They'll always come in at their native resolution, so sometimes you might need to shrink them a little bit. Sometimes you might need to grow them a little bit. As long as it's not a lot, it should stay within a good print resolution. Number 2 was this guy, my carnivorous plant. So bring it in. It's already almost perfect for its size. And then number 6, this was my sky, which I'm probably going to replace. But I liked that kind of moody jungle filtered sun. All right, so now this is a good time to save. Whenever you open a file and you add new layers to it, we're going to save it with your name. So I'm going to say File, Save As. And now this is no longer my sketch. This is my assignment. So Karl, Assignment 1, Gothic Jungle. I might put in FA23 Adobe, just because that's this section, for myself, to the desktop as a Photoshop document. I can hit Function F11 to see that it's there. I can mark it green. This is my working format. So I've got my sketch here that I posted. And now I have my PSD file where I'm going to be creating my final composite on top of my sketch. So just like we did with the cartoon jumble or the line art jumble, exercise 1, I'm going to start layering them layer by layer. You should start with your background layer because that's the easiest one. You just plop it in within your boundaries. You don't even need to change it from a smart object yet, but you might as well. So you right click and rasterize. This means I can erase from it. I can change the colors. You can do this all as a smart object too. You can't erase from it though. But if I wanted to shift, yeah, I could do lots of interesting dramatic things. But we'll get to that. Okay, that's placed. What's next? Let's do the cathedral. So now I'm going to put the cathedral on top of the background, right? The background should be last, on the bottom of the stack, on top of your sketch. But I can't see where the cathedral should go on my sketch because the background's in the way. So what can I do? I can turn the background off for now. I can take its opacity down, right? I can do lots of things. Now the cathedral has a lot of sky in it that I don't necessarily want. And I might want to tilt it more, so I can do Command T in Photoshop. I can tilt it. I like this idea of a slightly, non-horizontal ruin. So maybe about there. My problem is I don't need all the stuff around it. So this is what's called rough cutting. So if you're collaging, you might take out a whole magazine page, but you just want some part of it. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to turn off my guides for a second with Command semicolon. And I'm going to use my lasso, and I'm just going to rough cut this element out of the magazine, right? I want all of this for now. But I know I don't want the sky as much. So I've lassoed around it with a lot of extra space, a lot of overlap, and now I'm going to hit Command J. And Command J will make a duplicate of just what I selected right on top of it. And then I have this smart layer here. I don't need that anymore. I can delete it. So when you duplicate, it automatically rasterizes, which is very helpful. Then I can kind of move it into place, and then I can take its opacity way down. So I can see other things. So what goes in front of that? Well, I was thinking number 5. This guy. Oh, I already brought it in. So here it is. So same thing. I'm going to rough cut it. It's actually about the right size. But I don't necessarily need all this sky. So I'm just going to lasso what I want, hit Command J, and delete the smart layer. Roughly put it in place. Take down its opacity. You guys kind of seeing that so far? It can be tricky to see everything on top of your sketch, so one thing I sometimes do is I'll create a new blank layer, like we did for our emoji, and then I'll fill it with white. And then I will double click on the background to unlock it, rename it layer 0, and then move that on top so I can turn off my sketch just to see what I've got so far. So I've got 3 elements. I've got the background, I've got this church, I've got this temple. What's next? Let's move them in the right order, right? So what's next? And I can always turn these off. I've done 1, 2, 3. What's 7? I don't even remember. So I look, and it was another element. I did, yeah. That's what's beautiful. Oh, so 7 is this thing. It's an already cut out element. It's beautiful. I might try flipping it using transform. Maybe setting it something like there. Let's try that. I don't need to cut it out. It's already cut out. Right. So this is what's called a pre-prep asset. It's already prepared for us. And I want to put it in front of this one. Right? So I want to kind of match the horizon line a little bit and use some of those ruins. So actually it might go behind that one. Yeah, so it kind of stacks back. I like it on top. I like replacing, because I don't like those ceramic tiles. Right? So you can kind of see how it's working. I can put them in the right order, put this behind that, and we start stacking them up. Start taking their opacities up. And then the background's behind everything. So this is what I have so far. Like a rough cut collage. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I get into some of these foreground elements. First, using my sketch, I had 3, which was this. Move that in. This might be one that, because it's all organic, I'd use Command T, and I might actually hold down Shift and stretch this a little bit wider. Not too much, because then it's going to look weird. Because I'm going to have to put different reflections in it and stuff anyway. But I think maybe something kind of like this would be good. We shall see. And then what do I want? I don't need all this stuff at the top. Especially these trees and these leaves that are cropped off. I just need this bottom part. So Command J, delete the smart layer. If I ever need it, I have it in my references. And then I put that.
After you lasso, you're pressing what to turn up? Command J?
Command J, yep, to duplicate. We do a lot of Command J. So now I have that. So now how do those stack up? They stack up like so. and I want to take that. Let's see where.